he starts yanking on the box harder and harder, and then it's like, wham! All right, so silver, it's really heavy, okay, especially when you have a lot of it, like I do. This is a 100 ounce piece right here, and starting to give me a little bit of a shoulder workout. I'm actually pretty sure that 4,000 ounces of silver that I have stored in one of my bank safes broke my banker's foot. I have a video that I'll show you in a little bit, and also a story behind that we'll get to in just a second. And look, no, no, no. A bank safe is not my first, or even my second, or even my third choice when it comes to silver storage. I have some silver stored there, and I'm going to tell you why. But I also want to tell you everything you want to consider when storing your silver. Super important to keep your stuff safe and keep you on the right track. So, when you're a smaller silver investor, storage really isn't as complicated, right? Although you do need to consider different factors for different amounts of silver. 1,000 ounces of silver is like a little over $25,000 right now in 2024, and it weighs about 60 pounds or so. I actually have 1,000 ounces of silver here to kind of give you a visual of what 1,000 ounces of silver looks like in terms of size. So let's check that out really quick.
All right, so this is 1,000 ounces of silver. Now, actually, it's 900 because I'm a complete idiot. I thought I got out 10 boxes out of one of my storage areas. I only got out 9, but just imagine there's another box here. And you can get a visual for, it's not a ton, right? It's not like a big area, but the problem is it's very heavy. So I'm going to just open one of these boxes and just show you how it looks inside. All right, so we got, of course, 10 ounce bars in here, so you can see. So it's not like super big, but when you start getting more weight and getting a ton of these, it gets heavy because this right here is 6 pounds, okay? If you have 10 boxes right here, it's a little over 6 pounds. 10 boxes would be a little over 60 pounds. Just going and getting these 9 boxes, which I thought was 10, like an idiot. Well, carrying the bag around from one of my storage areas to my office to shoot this video was a pain. It was heavy, right? It wasn't easy to carry. So just imagine when you have 10,000 ounces or 50,000 ounces or 100,000 ounces, if you're storing it at home, it can get very, very heavy. So this is just a visual. This is what it will look like. Of course, with the boxes, it's a little more bulky. But you can imagine if I had all 100 or actually all 90 of these out, how big it would look. All right.
So as you can see from the video, 1,000 ounces of silver isn't super bulky, right? And it's only around like 60 pounds or so. So storage generally isn't as complicated when you're talking about this amount of silver. Of course, we are going to pretend I didn't forget one box of silver and I had a full 1,000 ounces, but close enough. Then, of course, we have this right here, which is a 100-ounce bar of silver. Of course, 10 of these would be, 1,000 ounces. And then this is the bar close up of kind of what I had in the box. This is a 10-ounce bar of silver. This is by far what I hold the most of, these 10-ounce bars. So as you move up the ladder, and let's say you get like 10,000 ounces of silver, which is like 600 pounds or so, or even to like the 100,000 ounce of silver range, which is like 6,000 pounds or so, that's when things get a little more complicated, okay? But with that said, no matter what amount you have, most of what I'm talking about applies to both large and small amounts, just even like little 1 ounce silver coins. So the first question people usually ask is where, right? Where should I store my silver where it's going to be safe? Where am I the safest? And personally, I recommend diversification. I recommend you have some at home, right? Hidden in multiple different places, which we will talk about shortly on how to exactly to hide it. I recommend you also have some in some sort of storage. And then for some of you higher net worth individuals, it could make sense to hold some in an IRA for tax benefits. So in the stacker community, the big thing is storing like all or most of your stuff at home, okay? One of the main reasons that I keep very little at home is because I have a public YouTube channel and people know I have a lot of silver, so it doesn't make sense for me to store a lot of silver at home. Now, how much you hold at your house just depends on some factors like who knows you have it, right? Now, if no one knows you have it, keep it that way. And if you're in that situation, you are safer to hold a lot at your house with extra precautions in place, which I'll talk about shortly. Now, you also need to ask yourself, what is the number that you're comfortable with as far as storing that amount at your home? And this answer is going to differ person to person. It's going to be different for each person. And I think that's also going to depend on where do you live, right? Like what's the size and what's the location of your living space? That all matters. So if you live in like a smaller apartment in the city, you're probably less likely to want to hold a lot at your house or your apartment in this case. Now, on the other end of that, if you live in a large house with lots of land in the country, well, in that case, you may be more likely to want to hold a lot at your house. So, if you're going to store the silver at your house, here's some extremely important tips for you. So, tip number one is you do not want to store where people like plumbers, electricians, or someone else working on the house may have access to it. I personally know people who have stored silver and gold in places like a crawl space or something like that. And then they needed someone to work on, something that kind of broke in the house, or they need to get to that crawl space, not realizing that the person has to go there, or just totally forgetting about it. And then all of a sudden their gold or silver disappears. Or, they store it, let's say, in like an attic, right? Thinking that it's hidden and it's hard to get to, and no one ever goes up there, not realizing that the HVAC guy has to get up there when you have AC problems. And I know it seems far fetched, but it happens a whole lot more than you think. So you have to be careful when choosing your spot. So, number two, do not put it in a sock drawer or like in the corner of a closet. And definitely do not put it under your mattress. These are some of the first places that intruders are going to look if they get into your house. Look, keep this in mind, right? A criminal doesn't want to get caught. They're just going to try to rip everything apart as fast as they can. And likely, what they're going to do is they're going to turn drawers inside out. They're going to flip the mattresses. They're going to rummage the closets. And then, maybe they're going to look for like obvious hidden compartments like, safes or even like bookcase safes type areas like that. So, number three, get cameras with a sign that actually says this house is protected by cameras and an alarm system. So, this is a really small cost for possibly keeping intruders out. Or if they do decide to come in, they're probably not going to stay long, right? Because they don't want to get caught. And they may even be identified so you can recover anything that's possibly stolen. So, an alarm system with this is also an obviously very good investment. So, number four, this is a big one, layer your hiding spots. For example, get a floor safe, right? But don't just stop there. On top of the floor safe, you get a carpet layering, right? On top of the carpet layering, you get a natural looking heavy piece of furniture. Even something like a couch will be totally fine here. What you want to do when you think of layering is think of things that people would have to do multiple steps in order to find your hiding spot. And that is what I mean when I say layering your spots. Make them have to do multiple steps before they actually find it. Number five, really undervalued. Get a dummy safe and put just a little bit in there. So if you're not home, what's going to happen is the intruder is likely going to focus all their time on that dummy safe. Okay. And if they open it, they're going to think they struck gold because they found a little bit. Your real safe will be hidden in a different spot. Okay. If you want to take it to the next level, you can have multiple dummy safes, then have your real safe in a layered spot, which has, 99% of what you own in there. And of course, how far you take this just likely is going to depend on, the amount you have and how much precaution that you want to take. Now, a bolt down safe is an option as a real hiding place, but if you are home during an intrusion, that's not going to matter much, right? Now, if you do want to go that route, a lot of people will just put like a few 45-pound weight plates or like those lifting plates in those types of safes, or any type of safe that you can fit them in, so that they're like too heavy to pick up, and it'll be a lot of trouble for them getting that out of there. But obviously, again, if you're home and someone has a gun to your head, it's just not going to matter. It doesn't happen nearly as often as a burglary, as far as having a gun to your head. Most intruders just want to steal without you there because the penalty is much lower. But obviously, a gun to your head can and does happen, so you got to consider that. So, option number 6, bury it. Now, a lot of people are against this one, but I like it for some people, right? If you have a good bit of land and you're in the right situation, you just have to be really smart with this one. Don't bury it in an impossible place, right, where no one's going to find it, but also don't bury it in a very obvious place. A good option is to pick a landmark, right, and then do something like measure 10 feet right, and then 10 feet down, and then have that be the center of the burying spot. After you bury it, just make sure you fix up the ground, right? So it doesn't look like you just buried something. You obviously want to hide that part. And then also remember that if you tell no one, it likely won't ever be found, which means that kids and family will not be able to be passed that wealth if you something happens to you. Just be aware of that. And then be very strategic with who you tell and make sure they know that no one can know, right? Like it's not something we can keep telling people. Likely it's going to be the person or a few people that are in your will that you're going to be telling. So, number 7 is diversify. Just as I recommend diversifying with where you store your silver, I also recommend to diversify home storage by storing it in different places. So, just to give you an example, right? You put some in a floor safe, you put some in a wall safe, you put some, buried, and then maybe very little in that dummy safe, which is going to attract that attention. And that's just an example, but I wouldn't put it all in one place. That's kind of putting all your chips in on one bet. If that bet goes bad, not good. Now, when it comes to what to store it in, a lot of people like storing their silver in capsules or some other type of airtight packaging to prevent the tarnishing, which can happen. Tarnishing of silver happens when the silver is exposed to sulfur-containing gases in the air, and then the silver gets discolored, right? It gets like black marks on it, which we've shown in some of our videos. But that's how tarnishing happens, and that's why people keep their stuff in airtight packages or like capsules. Again, I personally just don't care much about this because the tarnishing can be cleaned and it doesn't affect the price of the silver, right? Silver is valued by weight and is valued by purity, not really condition or looks. And again, you can clean it anyways. I'm actually going to shoot a video on how to clean this. So you can actually have one. I want to shoot a new one, but you can check that out if you want to clean your silver. Also, keep in mind that temperature doesn't really matter outside of like a fire. Just make sure you get a fireproof safe if you're storing your silver in a safe. But outside of a fire, temperature doesn't matter whether it's cold or warmer. That's not a big deal. All right. So at the beginning of the video, I talked about 4,000 ounces of silver that I have stored in a bank safe that I'm pretty sure broke my banker's foot. I heard him squeal. So what I want to do is just show you a quick video of that safe so you can get a good visual for this story.
I'm shaking my head because he didn't get me.
So that safe has actually been in storage for almost 15 years, and I hadn't checked it probably in like 10 years or so. So I was like, I should probably go in there and just do a goodwill check on it, right? I'll make sure it's all still there, make sure everything's good. I guess you could call it a wellness check on my gold and silver. So the banker, he brings me back to the vault, brings me back to the area, and he finds my box and he inserts the key and he goes to pull it out and he's pulling, and it won't budge. And before I move on, let me add, I swear that I'm not an asshole, okay? I didn't even remember like exactly how much was in there, or I didn't do any type of calculations on like how heavy the box could be. I knew that it was on the heavy side, but I was probably thinking, maybe like 50 pounds, maybe 100 pounds, something like that. Not what it was, which was actually like a 250 pounds. So just keep that in mind. Anyways, he's pulling on, he's pulling, won't budge. He's like, man, it's stuck. And I said, well, I said, I haven't been here in like 10 years, so I'm not totally sure, but I think it's just because it's really heavy because of what's in there. And he's kind of like a younger guy. He's like, nah, it's probably just stuck from being here so long. So he starts yanking on the box harder and harder. And then little by little, it starts to slide. So slowly, pull, slides a little bit, pull, slides a little bit. And eventually he pulls it all the way out. It's like, wham! That 250-pound hard-edged safety deposit box lands right on the top of his foot. And I mean, this dude, he yelped and his whole face turned bright red. I felt absolutely horrible. So we get the box off his foot, and I think he's kind of not trying to show me how bad that he's hurt. Although I can definitely tell because he's like hobbling around nervously and almost like dancing in place, and again his face is like turning red. So eventually he kind of calms down a little bit, and he's like, "All right, so let me get this box to the room so you can do what you need to do." So he goes to pick up the box, and because it's 250 pounds, he can't get his fingers on it, so he can't pick it up. So he tries to grab the handle and tries to slide it, and it won't budge, even on like a carpet floor. Now, I do a good bit of lifting, right? I can deadlift like 400 pounds or so. So I'm thinking I can pick this thing up and slide it. Nope. The problem is silver, it's so compact, and this box was so heavy and so compact, and there was nothing to hold on to, right? Just this little handle. So you had to try to get your fingers under this box. And if you lose your grip, it's going to crush your fingers. So I would like get a little bit in there and it would almost crush my fingers. And there's a little handle up front, like I said, but there's nowhere else to grip. So finally, he's like, look, like, I'm not really sure what to do here. Like, you're supposed to go take this to the other room, but we can't move it. And I'm not really sure how we're going to get this back up in its slot, to be honest with you, because it was like the third slot up, which was maybe like 3 feet off the ground, something like that. So it wasn't like we could just like slide it right back in. We had to pick it up to slide it back in. So eventually, what happened was he just had me go through the box in the vault room, which is not common. They usually do not allow that, but we had no other choice. So I ended up just having to take a bunch out so we could lift the safe back into where it went, which meant, he saw what was actually in my box, which I was okay with. What I'm actually going to plan on doing is going back and taking like half of it out and then putting that in another storage area so the box weighs a lot less. That way, I can kind of diversify my storage more. And, this guy now knows what's in there. Although he works at the bank, I don't trust it. So I'll probably take out half, put it somewhere else, and that will diversify. But, I tell you this story for a couple different reasons. So, number one, don't make the same mistake I did and store so much silver in one place, like in a big bank safe. Get smaller boxes and then split them up if you're going to even be storing in a safety deposit box. Again, I have some of mine in there, but most of mine is in other places. The second reason I told you this is to help you understand that silver is heavy as you get more. Okay, it's really heavy, so it's going to be more of a pain to store. This means that storage is more complex than gold storage, right? If you're used to storing gold, it's a whole lot more complex. So make sure that you think of this ahead of time before you start investing. All right, so I hope this video helps you with your silver storage. Make sure you give me a comment below. Give me your best story. I want to know about your silver storage. If you have anything as crazy as mine, did you break any banker's foot? I want to know about it. Also, make sure you check out the links below. We got links to our recommended dealers if you want to use any of them. If not, cool. Use your own dealers. But again, give us a comment, like, subscribe. See y'all soon.